Welcome, my loves. Tonight's story asks a terrifying question. Who did I marry? Hopefully, you all learn a lesson from this story and ask yourselves that same question before you say, I do. Let's begin. Maria was exhausted. After a 12-hour shift, all she wanted was to get home, take a hot shower, and collapse into bed. The sun had already disappeared below the horizon, leaving the neighborhood bathed in darkness. The only sounds were the hum of her engine and the occasional chirp of crickets outside her car window. "Oh, I'm so tired," Maria muttered as she turned onto her street. Then she saw them, red and blue lights, flashing, reflecting off every house, every parked car, every window. Maria immediately sat up straighter. What is going on? The exhaustion vanished instantly. As she drove closer, her stomach began to tighten. The police weren't at some random house. They were at Angelica's house, her next-door neighbor, her friend. The road ahead was blocked by patrol vehicles. Officers stood everywhere. Neighbors crowded the sidewalks and driveways, whispering among themselves. Something was very wrong. "Oh my God, Angelica," Maria whispered. She parked her car and shut off the engine. For a moment, she simply sat there, staring. Nobody seemed to know what was happening. Then movement caught her eye. The front door opened. A man emerged. Angelica's husband. His hands were cuffed behind his back. An officer escorted him toward a waiting vehicle. The crowd gasped. Maria felt her heart drop. No. Moments later, Angelica's teenage son was brought outside. He was crying. His wrists were bound in handcuffs. Another officer guided him toward a second vehicle. The neighbors stood frozen. Some recorded with their phones. Others looked away. Maria couldn't move. She felt like she was watching a nightmare unfold. Then she finally found her legs. She jumped out of her car and sprinted toward the house. "Angelica!" Her friend was being led out of the house in handcuffs. Tears streamed down Angelica's face. The sight made Maria's stomach twist. "Maria, please!" Angelica cried. "Help me! They're taking us!" The words hit Maria like a punch to the chest. "What is happening?" she screamed. Angelica's voice broke. "It's ice." The entire street fell silent. Even the neighbors stopped talking. "It's ice," Angelica repeated. "They're taking my family." Maria felt panic flooding through her body. She struggled against the officers holding her back. "Let her go! She didn't do anything!" Angelica continued sobbing as officers escorted her toward the waiting vehicles. "Maria, please help me and my family." "I will," Maria yelled. "I promise. I'll help you. I won't let this happen." Then suddenly 2 arms wrapped around her from behind. "Maria." It was Antonio, her husband. "Stop," he said. She continued struggling. "Let me go! Maria, please." "They're taking her." "I know." "Then do something." Antonio's voice was, "There is nothing we can do right now." Maria stopped fighting, not because she wanted to, but because deep down she knew he was right. The vehicles began pulling away, one by one, and Angelica was gone. For several moments, Maria stood motionless in the middle of the street. The flashing lights continued to paint the neighborhood in shades of red and blue. Nobody spoke. Nobody moved. It was as if the entire block had been frozen in time. Finally, the last government vehicle disappeared around the corner. The nightmare was over. At least, it was over for everyone except Angelica and her family. Maria felt her knees weaken. Antonio gently wrapped an arm around her shoulders. "Come on," he said. "Let's go home." Maria didn't argue. She simply nodded. As they walked back toward their house, she noticed neighbors slowly returning indoors. Doors closed, porch lights shut off. Within minutes, it was almost as if nothing had happened. But Maria knew better. A family had just disappeared, and nobody had been able to stop it. Inside their home, Maria sank onto the couch. Her hands were trembling. "I can't believe this," she said. Antonio sat beside her. "I know." "No, you don't." Maria looked at him. "You didn't see her face." Antonio remained silent. "She was terrified." "I know." "They took her entire family." "I know." Maria buried her face in her hands. For several minutes, neither of them spoke. Finally, Antonio stood. "You haven't eaten all day." "I'm not hungry." "You need to eat." Maria shook her head. "I can't." Antonio. Then he knelt beside her. "Maria." She looked up. His expression was calm. "Let's go get dinner." "What?" "Your favorite place." Maria stared at him. How could he be thinking about food right now? How could anyone? But then a sharp pain twisted through her stomach. She realized she hadn't eaten since the previous evening. Antonio offered his hand. "Come on." After a long pause, Maria finally accepted it. 20 minutes later, they were driving through the city. Neither spoke much during the ride. The radio remained off. The silence inside the vehicle felt heavy, almost uncomfortable. Eventually, the glowing sign of Panchito's Panza appeared ahead. The restaurant parking lot was nearly full. Inside, the smell of fresh tortillas, sizzling fajitas, and grilled meat filled the air. Families sat together. Children ran between tables. Servers hurried back and forth, carrying trays piled high with food. Life continued, as if nothing had happened. "Table for two?" the hostess asked. "Yes, please," Antonio replied. A few minutes later, they were seated near the center of the restaurant. Maria stared down at the menu. She wasn't reading it. Her mind remained fixed on Angelica. The handcuffs, the crying, the fear. "She's my friend," Maria said quietly. Antonio looked up. "I know." "What if they deport them?" "We don't know that." "What if they do?" "Antonio." "Then we'll help however we can." Maria shook her head. "It isn't fair." "No, it's not." For the first time all evening, Antonio seemed genuinely upset. But only for a moment. Then his expression returned to normal. The waitress arrived and took their order. As she walked away, Maria rubbed her temples. A headache was beginning to form. The restaurant suddenly felt hotter, louder, more crowded, almost suffocating. Then she noticed something strange. The conversations around them were beginning to fade. One by one, people were turning toward the front windows. The laughter stopped. The music seemed quieter. A strange tension spread across the room. Maria turned toward the entrance. At first, she saw nothing. Then flashes of red and blue illuminated the glass. The color drained from her face. "No!" More lights appeared, closer, brighter. The restaurant doors suddenly burst open. Several armed agents entered. Dark uniforms, badges, protective vests. The entire restaurant fell silent. One of the agents stepped forward. His voice echoed through the room. "Everyone remain seated." Nobody moved. Nobody even breathed. "This is Immigration and Customs Enforcement." A child began crying. Somewhere across the restaurant, a woman gasped. Another customer whispered 2 words that instantly sent panic through the room. "La migra." The reaction was immediate. People stood. Chairs scraped across the floor. Children began screaming. Several customers rushed toward the rear exits. The agents moved quickly. Orders were shouted. People were stopped. Questions were demanded. And within seconds, chaos consumed the restaurant. Maria watched in horror as a young mother clutched her daughter tightly. An agent was attempting to separate them. The little girl screamed. The mother screamed louder. Across the room, 2 men were forced to the ground. Someone knocked over a table. Glass shattered. The entire restaurant felt like it was collapsing into panic. Maria shot to her feet. "We have to help them." She started moving. Antonio grabbed her arm. "Maria, no." "Maria, let me go." His grip tightened. "There is nothing we can do." "They're separating families." "I know." "Then help them." Antonio's eyes locked onto hers. For a moment, something about his expression felt strange, cold, detached, almost emotionless. Then it vanished. "You can't stop this," he said. Maria stared at him. Something about the way he said it made a chill crawl up her spine. Before she could respond, an agent approached their table. The man rested a hand on the pair of handcuffs hanging from his belt. Maria's heart nearly stopped. Then Antonio calmly reached into his pocket. He pulled out 2 American passports. One belonged to him, the other belonged to Maria. The agent examined them, only for a few seconds. Then he nodded. "You're free to go." Maria blinked. She hadn't even realized Antonio had brought their passports. The agent handed them back. "Leave through the front entrance." Antonio stood immediately. "Thank you, officer." He grabbed Maria's hand. "Let's go." Maria looked back one last time. The crying, the screaming, the terrified faces. It reminded her of Angelica, and somehow that feeling of dread she'd felt earlier returned, stronger than before. As Antonio led her toward the exit, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was very, very wrong. 20 minutes later, they arrived home. The house was silent. Antonio headed upstairs without saying much. Maria remained alone in the living room. The events of the evening replayed endlessly in her mind. Angelica being led away in handcuffs, the terrified look on her face, the crying children inside the restaurant, the mothers screaming for their families. Maria couldn't stop thinking about any of it. Her eyes drifted toward the front window. The neighborhood looked peaceful now, almost too peaceful, as if nothing had happened, as if entire families hadn't been taken away only hours earlier. Maria rubbed her face. She felt exhausted, emotionally drained, broken. Then her cell phone rang. The sudden sound nearly made her jump. She looked down. Unknown number. Maria frowned. Who would be calling this late? The phone continued ringing. After a few seconds, she answered. "Hello?" For a moment, all she heard was static. Then a voice, a familiar voice. "Maria?" Maria immediately sat upright. "Angelica?" A sob came through the phone. "Oh my God, Maria!" Maria felt tears filling her eyes. "Angelica, are you okay?" "No." The answer came instantly, broken, defeated. "No, Maria, I'm not okay." Maria could hear voices in the background, metal doors opening and closing, someone crying, someone yelling. It sounded like some kind of detention facility. "Where are you?" Maria asked. "I don't know." "What do you mean you don't know?" "They moved us." Angelica sniffled. "They separated us." Maria felt her stomach drop. "What?" "My husband is gone." Angelica began crying harder. "My son, too." A chill swept through Maria's body. "I don't know where they took them." Maria covered her mouth. "Oh my God." "I only have a few minutes." "What do you need?" "A lawyer." "You'll have one." "I don't have any money." "I don't care." Maria sat forward. "I'll find one, I promise." Angelica was silent for a moment. Then she spoke. "I knew I could trust you." "Of course." "And your husband." Maria frowned. "What do you mean?" "Antonio." A strange feeling crept into Maria's chest. What about Antonio? There was a brief pause. He came by this morning. Maria's heart skipped a beat. He did? Yes. Angelica sounded confused. You didn't know? No. The word barely escaped Maria's lips. Angelica sounded even more confused. You really didn't know? Maria's heart began pounding. No. There was silence on the line. Then Angelica spoke again. He came by earlier to borrow the lawnmower. I was upset. I had just learned that our asylum paperwork had expired. We were no longer legally protected. I told Antonio everything. Maria's grip tightened around the phone. He seemed genuinely concerned. Angelica continued. He asked if there was anything he could do to help us. Then he left. Silence hung between them. Finally, Angelica spoke again. Maria, I have to go. Please, help us find a lawyer. You have my word, Maria said. Stay strong. Thank you, my friend. The call ended. Maria lowered the phone slowly. Her mind raced. Antonio had never mentioned visiting Angelica, and now, after everything that had happened, that omission suddenly felt important. Very important. Maria walked upstairs and entered the bedroom. Antonio was sitting on the edge of the bed. Hey, honey, he said. I borrowed your fabric scissors earlier. They're on the dresser. Maria nodded absently. Can I ask you something? Of course. Were you at Angelica's house this morning? Antonio looked up. Yeah. Our mower wasn't working, so I borrowed theirs. Maria studied his face. And she told you about her family's immigration situation? A flicker crossed Antonio's eyes. She did. He paused. How do you know that? Why are you asking? I just got off the phone with Angelica, Maria replied. She told me. Maria took a step closer. And why did you have our passports tonight? Antonio frowned. What do you mean? At the restaurant. His expression tightened slightly. You had both passports ready before the ICE agent even spoke to us. Neither of them said anything. The silence felt heavier with each passing second. Finally, Maria, Antonio. His eyes met hers. Did you call ICE on Angelica's family? The room seemed to freeze. Antonio looked away. For several seconds he said nothing. Then Yes. Maria felt the blood drain from her face. What? Yes. Her voice cracked. Why? Antonio stood. Because they were no longer here legally. Maria stared at him. They're our neighbors. They're immigrants. They're our friends. Antonio shook his head. They're your friends, not mine. I only associate with people who belong here. Maria stared at him in disbelief. You reported them? I did the right thing. Maria couldn't believe what she was hearing. And the restaurant? Antonio remained silent. Maria already knew the answer. You called ICE on the restaurant too. Those agents were investigating multiple locations. Answer me! Antonio's jaw tightened. Yes. Maria stepped backward. It felt like she was standing in front of a stranger. You are not the man I married. Antonio laughed bitterly. Maybe I'm finally seeing things clearly, especially after the 2024 election. What happened to you? My eyes opened years ago. Opened to what? To reality. Maria shook her head. No, this isn't reality. This is hatred. Antonio took a step toward her. You don't understand. No, Antonio, you don't understand. Maria's voice trembled. Families are being destroyed. Families that don't belong here. Maria stared at him. Disgust, fear, confusion. All of it crashed together inside her. I'm going to help Angelica. Antonio's face changed instantly. No. I'm getting her a lawyer. No. I'm leaving. Antonio grabbed her wrist hard. You're not going anywhere. Pain shot through Maria's arm. Let me go. Maria, listen to me. You're hurting me. His grip tightened. You need to stop. Maria tried pulling away. Antonio shoved her backward. She slammed into the dresser. The impact rattled everything sitting on top. The scissors fell to the floor. For a split second, neither of them moved. Then Antonio stepped toward her again. His face looked wild now, desperate, unrecognizable. I did all of this for us, he said. Maria's heart pounded. No, you did it for yourself. Antonio reached for her. Instinct took over. Maria grabbed the scissors from the floor and swung blindly. Antonio cried out. A sharp stab of pain shot through his arm. He stumbled backward and looked down. The scissors were buried deep in his arm. Maria! He shouted. Shock and anger twisted across his face. Why did you do that? Maria backed away, terrified. Stay away from me! Antonio grabbed the handle and tried to pull the scissors free, but couldn't. Blood immediately began running down his sleeve. Then his expression changed. The anger vanished, replaced by something far worse. Rage. Antonio charged forward. Before Maria could react, he slammed into her. The force threw her backward onto the bed. The air exploded from her lungs. Antonio climbed on top of her, pinning her down beneath his weight. I love you, Maria, he pleaded. His voice sounded frantic, desperate. Please, just listen to me. Get off me, Maria screamed. You're confused. You're hurting me. No, I'm trying to save you. Antonio pressed down harder. Maria struggled to breathe. His weight felt crushing. The room spun. You'll understand one day, Antonio said. You'll see I was right. No, Maria gasped. Never! Antonio leaned closer, trying to restrain her. As Maria fought against him, her eyes locked onto the scissors still buried in his arm. Blood dripped from the wound onto the bed. Then Antonio shifted his weight just enough. Maria suddenly managed to free one of her hands. Her fingers wrapped around the handle of the scissors protruding from his arm. Antonio's eyes widened. Maria, don't! But it was too late. With every ounce of strength she had left, Maria ripped the scissors free. Ah! Antonio screamed. Before he could react, she drove the scissors upward into his chest. Everything stopped. Antonio froze. His mouth opened, but no words came out. Slowly he looked down. The scissors were buried to the handle. A dark stain spread across his shirt. The anger disappeared from his face, then the confusion, leaving only disbelief. He stared at Maria as if he couldn't understand what had just happened. His body grew heavy. Then he rolled off her and collapsed onto the bed beside her. For several seconds, neither of them moved. The only sound in the room was Antonio's ragged breathing. "Maria," he whispered. Tears streamed down her face. "I wanted you to be my MAGA wife." Antonio's eyes remained fixed on her. Then slowly the light faded from them. Maria sat there in stunned silence. For a long moment, she simply stared at him, the man she had loved, the man she thought she knew, gone. Finally, she forced herself to stand. She looked down at Antonio one last time. Then she turned and walked out of the room without saying a word. Maria had a mission now. She was going to save her friend. She was going to save her friend's family. Well, my beloveds, that was certainly an interesting love story. I hope yours has a better ending. And before you say, "I do," make sure you truly know who you're marrying. Kisses. Until next time, when the dead of night speaks.